Dadhood. Modern Dadhood podcast.
Hey, Adam Flaherty.
Hey, what's up?
You want to record a Modern Dadhood
I do.
episode of our podcast?
Yes, I do.
Let's do that.
All right. Parents listening, this podcast is called Modern Dadhood. It's an ongoing...
I already said that part.
It's an ongoing conversation about the joys, challenges, and general insanity of being a dad in this moment.
Yes.
My name is Adam Flaherty, and I am a dad to two daughters who are 10 and 7. You, my friend?
My name is Mark Andrew Checkett, and I'm also a dad. I have twins. They're both boys, 6 and a half, somewhere between 6 and a half and somewhere and 6 3/4.
Same age.
If we're trying to be accurate. They're the same age because they're twins, though I can't tell you how many arguments we get into when one of them reminds whatever room he's in that we're all in that he was born a minute earlier.
So he's a minute wiser.
I mean, I wouldn't say that. But yeah, there's a lot of fights that start that way.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Great Halloween party at your house.
Oh,
my family had some laughs and lots of good food and some adult beverages, and it was a hoot. There were a lot of people.
Well, there were a lot of folks that came through this house, and we're still. I mean, I'd be lying if I said we weren't still cleaning up a little bit. I think by this weekend we're going to have everything back in order. But yeah, I was really happy that you and your the whole fam came. It was great to see you all.
It was a great party, and I hope that it's an annual tradition, and I hope that we keep getting invited year over year. Didn't wear out our welcome. Would you want to tell the listeners what they're in for with this podcast?
With this podcast?
Just give them a real quick rundown.
Well, I guess the first thing I'd like to say is if this is your first time listening, hey,
welcome.
Good to see you. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome home.
The next thing I'd like to say is that this is a fantastic show here wherein Adam and I, who I should asterisk, are not experts in any way in the field of dadding, parenting, etc. But what we do.
Shut up. Everybody got the joke without you stopping and waiting and then repeating it.
What we do is bring people on the show who help us to sort of like widen our perspective or shift our perspective in some way, shape, or form. We've got folks that are definitely experts in certain areas, folks that are just dads like us trying to like slog through this life and figure things out. And you know what? It's quite a hoot sometimes, but it also gets serious from time to time. So glad that you're here. Stay along for the ride.
Subscribe to
the show. You can find us on any one of the platforms,
including the one you're listening on right now.
Hey, you know what else you should do is if you like the show, well, gosh darn it, go tell a friend. Maybe leave us a rating or a review somewhere. And you can always visit us on our website, which is moderndadhood.com, where you can look at our whole back catalog of episodes.
Today's episode's a great one because our guest he's also not a fatherhood expert, but I think he's really similar to us in some ways. Yeah. He's like the TV show version of Modern Dadhood, a very kind of typical, down-to-earth dad who's just figuring it out as he goes, but he's striving to learn and to be better through conversations with other dads. And he's traveling the country and traveling the world, actually, making a PBS show called Grown Up Dad. And his name is Joe Gidjunis. And he was a total delight to talk to. I'm totally psyched to call him a new friend.
Same. And I think our listeners are going to find that he fits right into this conversation. And you'll find out that he's a pretty gosh darn big fan of Bluey. And that's relevant to,
everybody.
His path that he's on right now. Well, everybody, sure, yeah.
Yeah, who doesn't love Bluey?
But to his story in particular.
Mark, I'm going to propose something.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just get into that. Parents listening, Joe Gidjunis. Usually we start our introductions with saying what our guest does professionally or some kind of accolade about them. But in this case, we're going to start just by saying that our guest, Joe Gidjunis, is a dad. He is a former journalist. He's a photographer, an aspiring filmmaker, and the creator of the PBS documentary series Grown Up Dad. But again, first and foremost, he's a dad right at the top of that list. And Joe, it's a delight to have you here. Thanks for making time to join us.
Oh, Adam, Mark, thank you so much. And by the way, bonus points for getting my last name right. Like, that is really hard to do. So impressive.
We try to do our research.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I wasn't repeating it for several minutes before we hopped on today. So Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get rolling. You have one son, is that correct?
Yeah, I have an 8-year-old son named Gabe. And honestly, I was not the dad who thought he would become a dad. And for a lot of my life, I didn't think I wanted to be a dad. And then something kind of just changed with me and my wife. And we were a little bit older. I was in my early 30s. And it's like, no, we really want to do this. And we had our firstborn, and we also, though, stopped at one, too, because of how hard it is to be a dad and be a parent. So I always look to anyone who's got like 2, 3 and more kids. I'm like, wow, you guys are masters, right? Because I've got my own hands full with just one.
I do the same thing. I mean, I'm my wife and I have twins, so we've got 2, both 6.5 years old. But I do the same thing. I look at people with 3 kids and I just go like, I don't even understand how you're up walking around right now.
I don't either. I just say you guys must have a master's degree in economics too, to make the financial situation.
Right. Right. There's so much. Tell us a little bit about what inspired Grown Up Dad. I know we're all sort of a little bit, I guess, clueless when it comes to becoming parents for the first time. And we all sort of learn as we go. And I think you kind of talk about that a little bit. But just before we get too far into it, like, what is Grown Up Dad? Talk to us a little bit about what inspired this.
Thank you so much. I'm in the middle of the pandemic. We're all trying to figure out what's important to us in our lives. And I'm sitting there with my 3-year-old then at the time and being like, I am not sure what the heck I'm supposed to be doing right now. Like, this is so hard. And I don't have a role model and I don't know what's appropriate. I'm just feeling so unprepared in a way that was even different than when, he was first born. And like, I do not want to be repeating these mistakes that I feel like occurred for my upbringing. And I don't want to be the same kind of dad as my dad was. And look, my dad was performing the way he thought he was supposed to. He was a provider, even though it meant, I might only see him like 4 days a whole month, kind of thing. And I just didn't want to repeat that for him. So I'm like, how do we figure this out? And I didn't know. And when I started to look for what a role model might be in my life, honestly, I was looking probably toward television and seeing the stereotypical bumbling dad on TV, the Tim Allens, the Tim the Toolman Taylors, Al Bundys, and from Married with Children. I'm just like, okay, look, I'm laughing. These guys are making me laugh, but like, they are not capable of doing any of this. And it started out with me thinking I was actually going to do a comparison of dads on TV and looking at that. And that idea actually really didn't accomplish what I was wanting to do. And so finally, some people close to me were like, why are you not putting yourself in the show? And me, I'm a journalist, a photographer. I'm always a behind the camera kind of guy. And they're like, you got to be in front of the camera. And that was probably the biggest change for me, is figuring out, how do I talk about this and talk about my real story? And so when I finally put myself in it, the whole premise changed to be like, oh, this is about me just kind of figuring this out. And so Grown Up Dad is the first documentary series about parenting from the father's perspective. As much as there's lots of things about parenting everywhere, millions of books and things, but there isn't a show about this. We aren't visually seeing dads on TV. And so every time I'm able to put a good dad on TV, I actually feel like I'm countering 75 years of bad dads on television. And so what I'm thrilled with is that my first episode aired this past June, and everyone can still see it if they search Grown Up Dad and PBS. The link comes up. And Actually, it's great timing for this. Just this week, we got told the next 4 episodes we've been working on are greenlit. They're great, and everything should be airing in June around Father's Day 2025. So
Amazing.
I'm really excited to be making 4 more about topics that we can all relate to.
That's awesome and very exciting, and congratulations that they obviously see the
Thank
value
you.
in it and keep allowing for more to be made. My whole career has been in video production, and so part of me wonders, as you were coming up with this concept and kind of working through exactly what it was going to be, did you always envision it as a documentary series and something that you intended to pitch to networks and just see if there was what if you came up with this great concept and there just was no buyer for it?
That's a really good question, Adam. Like, you definitely understand the industry, because no, that was not my idea at first whatsoever. Originally, it started out as a film about comparing the US and Australia, because what also though happened in 2020 is we got the amazing show Bluey that finally aired in the United States. And that became my first, honestly, role model for parenthood, is this cartoon dog from the show based in Australia. You know, Bandit is a loving and present father. You know, just happens to be an animated dog, you know, from Brisbane. But I was like, why is this not something that we had here in the US? Why are we only getting this now there? And then doing more research, we're like, oh, fatherhood is actually looked at a bit differently in Australia. And so I, in 2022, went to Australia to interview lots of dads down there. I met the creator, Joe Brum. We had some time together to talk, and it was just really meaningful to see just a little bit of the nuanced differences of what fatherhood, how it was respected and how it was, I think, appreciated more. And it was a little bit more equitable too in terms of like responsibilities. And they still had the same sense of humor. They still, have lots of all the same issues we have here, but there was just a little bit of a change, and I think an appreciation. And I was going to come back here and make a film about that comparison. As I'm coming home and I make my first promo, looking for investors to make a feature documentary film, I'd been sending that out to a lot of places. I was fortunate, a PBS station who became my presenting station. It's called WNED. They're Buffalo, Toronto. They saw it. And they reached out to me and they're like, actually, this might be better as a TV series. Wow. And I was so grateful, because actually at the time I'm like, right, I can't fit everything I want to say into one episode. It was getting a little complicated. And so it's like, all right, let's make a pilot. Now, the funny part about it is when they told me this, it was June 2023. So a little over a year ago. And they're like, well, we need you to get that pilot done in 13 weeks. Okay. I'm like, wait, what?
All right.
They're like, wait, how much material do you have? I'm like, well, I have a 3-minute promo. I'm like, okay, well, we need 30 minutes in 13 weeks. And we hadn't even interviewed anyone in the States yet. And so I basically just told all my friends and family, like, hey, I'm going to be working nonstop now for the rest of the summer. And me and my producer, Josh, we got on it and like kind of locked ourselves in a hotel room for a couple of days to figure out a story and who we wanted to interview. And we cranked out a pilot episode, which is what you guys will see today. And now we have episode 2 done. This is on screen time challenges and video games and social media, awesome. Light stuff, clearly. Not a big issue whatsoever. And then we have episodes about masculinity. We have another episode about loneliness and friendship and mental health. And actually the 5th episode, we're actually working on a little bit of an adjustment now, because we had really thought about doing a lot on phones in schools and how the rules were kind of, all over the place between especially high schools and middle schools. Like what are the rules to have your phones out? And when we were planning this, even 6 months ago, there were still plenty of schools that had these restrictions, but not as widespread. In the last 6 months, honestly, it was like Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, I think sparked a whole outcry, and like so many districts and states have changed the rules. And so that episode now, we really wouldn't have a lot to offer to it. And so we're beginning to change it and looking at different online behaviors and ways that parents can help their kids honestly be better people online too. And it's like, something we never had to deal with growing up ourselves, because I'm 42, when I was in school, pages didn't come out till I was in high school kind of thing. So it's like the idea that this is this is so pervasive is really hard. I think it's really one of the hardest parts about being a parent today.
And it seems like you've gotten some really great conversations too, right? I mean, the way that we learned about you was through the Surgeon General, who actually, I guess, had just filmed an interview with you. We can remove that if it's spoiling something that you're not ready to talk about.
No, absolutely. And I loved it when he talked about it and did your show too. Like he is such a great man.
Yes.
Such a warm person, right? It was like, what were your impressions of him?
Oh yeah. Just down to earth, just a good hang.
Yeah.
Obviously incredibly intelligent.
Like a very real person who, one of the things that struck me, I wondered going into the conversation, am I going to hear a lot of the just talking points sort of repeated back at us that I've spent the last couple of weeks like preparing for this interview? Have I already heard all of it? Not even. He wanted to talk to us, and he answered our questions very thoughtfully, and it was great. It was really like just talking to like maybe one of the dudes. He just happened to be much smarter.
He's clearly thought about this on a very personal level too, not just as a dad, but as a medical professional. And it's not just talking points too. His office has released so much about parenting this year alone. It makes you feel seen as a parent that like, yes, these things are so hard and we need to work on them because we're seeing the negative consequences of not helping parents. We're seeing birth rates drop. We're seeing less and less people wanting to have kids and the number of kids. And every week we see a story about how expensive childcare is and how difficult it is to make everything work. And so the fact that he is here giving us time and using his pulpit to get so much attention on these issues, I was, spending that time with him was great. And he let us take over his office for a half day and just make it look great and gave us so much of his time. It was really wonderful.
That's very cool. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for that episode. I should also say I've seen the first episode of Grown Up Dad, and I thought it was wonderful. And anybody can. I mean, I just went to I have an Apple TV. Went to the PBS app. It's right there. I mean, it's available for everybody. So I would certainly encourage all of our listeners to check it out for sure. I think you're gonna get a lot from it. Yeah. So in that first episode, you mentioned that part of the mission for Grown Up Dad is like to see dads or help dads to sort of evolve. And I think some of the things that you were just saying, right, being present, being willing, participants, being aware, sort of seems to be a little bit of what that means, I guess, when you say, but I'd love to hear you, maybe expand a little bit on what you mean when you say to see dads evolve. And then I also sort of second, I guess, maybe part to the question is, why do we need to see that evolution?
Well, the second question is easy. Like we know better. We can't sit back and think that doing things the same way is going to. We want to have better kids. We want to be better for ourselves. We all as parents want to see our kids thrive, right? And so this is a really different world. And look, millennial dads absolutely are already evolving. I mean, you see dads in the park, you see them more at school events, but you still don't see a majority of dads at these things. Right. You still don't see a majority of dads at these locations. And that is because I think of how hard it is in society to be a present dad and still be a provider and be, someone who society sees as really being as valued as a mother in the parenting role. And so even on TV, I think we still see a lot of fathers in our media that are not really present. And we have a lot of work to do, I think, to change that. But I want to have dads find the joy in parenthood. What was missing for me, no one ever told me how much fun parenting would be. No one ever said, like, this is so rewarding. Like, yes, it's the hardest thing you will ever do, but it is also so rewarding. And I never got that message. It was, okay, the real world's about to hit you, like, goodbye, free time. It was always like there's these struggles. And I was sad that message of joy was never brought to my attention. And So I wanted to share that with the world, and I want to tell people about how much I love being a dad. And I have started a business. I've actually started 2 businesses now. I am married. I've got a dog, and I've got great family and friends. But the best thing in my life is my son. And I never would have had that opportunity, and no one ever told me that was going to be possible. So I want dads to evolve, not just for our kids to be better. It's because I think they're going to find more joy in their own lives. This isn't strictly to help our kids. This is kind of selfish too. I'm like, I think there's been something missing, I think, from so many of our lives. And being able to be more present with my son and my family, I actually feel stronger as a man. I feel more fulfilled. That's not the message I ever got about masculinity growing up either.
It also seems that this is sort of a, I was kind of thinking about this last night. There's this connection or this correlation between, like, if you're a dad and you're present and you're feeling good about your performance as a dad, you can carry that through to the other parts of your life, right? Like, you can then go to work and in the afternoon, you can have a good morning. Hopefully it's a good morning, go to work. And then you feel you're at work and you're like, you started off your day as a dad. That went well. You carry that with you through your day at work. Say you have a good day at work, because you're also present there and you're also aware there. Then you come home at the end of the day and you bring that with you back. And it's this sort of circular thing. And one of the things, the thing that really made me start kind of thinking about this, and I'm curious as to either of your takes on this, is of all the sources, I heard Jeff Bezos in an interview give this quote about how he doesn't like the term work-life balance. He prefers the term, I wrote it down, I don't want to get it wrong. He prefers the term work-life harmony, because balance implies that there's a trade-off, but when rather it's this circular thing, and actually the good feelings over here you can carry them over here. And I just thought, like, but that's wonderful. I mean, I didn't expect it to hear from Jeff Bezos, but I thought that was kind of amazing. And it was a big shift for me in my thinking about the notion of work-life balance. It's just an anecdote that I wonder, how does that hit, like, either of you guys?
I talked to a guy, Mark, you weren't on this interview. His name was Young Han, a really savvy business guy last year. And he talked a lot about this, how there isn't in his opinion, there isn't a balance in it. And it is this kind of, not even spectrum. It's just this is your life and you're managing all of these things. And sometimes your attention is going to be more here and sometimes it's going to be more there. I think, it's hard to find a lot of things that I can relate to with a guy like Jeff Bezos. But I think that that's a great way to say it.
Yeah.
I feel as a parent, it is a struggle to find harmony, balance. I mean, when I give more time to my son, am I taking it away from my job? If I give it to my job, am I taking it away from my wife? I give it to my wife. Am I neglecting? What am I neglecting now? And I'm realizing that is a false narrative that I need to also eliminate from my mind, because there's never going to be enough time, but we can really give everyone a present time, like to really give them our attention, when it doesn't have to be equal 24 hours a day that we've given everyone every moment of our time. I mean, we have to, and actually, there's that piece in the show where I say, if I give it to my wife, like I'm neglecting something else, right? And then someone watched the show and came up to me and they were like, did you realize that you never put yourself in there, that you never gave yourself any of your own time or attention? I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even say that. Like, you're right. Because I'm so worried about being there for everybody else. Right. And I've totally neglected my own personal self. Wow. So that is something that I think a lot of dads also understand. It's like, we're just here to serve others. And we absolutely need to remember that we can't be good to anybody else if we aren't good to ourselves first, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I guess I've felt like ever since we heard from the Surgeon General that you existed, right, and clicked over and checked out what you were doing, I felt like we have had a lot of parallels. We share a lot of the same kind of goals and missions to to explore fatherhood and what makes the role of the dad, different from what it maybe looked like 20 years ago or 40 years ago, to celebrate fatherhood. Mark and I joke a lot that, and you, this is not meant to offend, but you fall into this category too. Like the three of us all look pretty much the same, Mark and I both live in suburban New England where it's not very diverse at all. And so one of the goals of our show is to bring on as many guests as possible whose life experiences are very different from our own, so that we can learn how they dad, right? And see if we can maybe become better parents by learning from their experiences. Where I'm going with this is, I know you're traveling a lot for your show. And so whether it's to a different part of the country or to a different part of the world, you're definitely speaking with people whose lives and experiences are very different from your own. And I wonder if any of those people or the stories you've heard or the wisdom that you've gleaned from those conversations have really resonated with you or stuck out with you.
There's too many stories to tell because we're finding some amazing, amazing people, just like you are, in all the interviews you guys are able to do. I'll just say the last interview, just last week, we were in St. Louis, and we were speaking with a younger nonprofit, about 5 years in existence, called the Village Path. And it's a nonprofit that brings African-American men together, and it supports them by fundraising to help them with mental health and get mental health services from other diverse providers as well. And it's this beautiful group of people just like, hey, we all need this. And it's been such a stigma, especially in the Black community, about getting mental health too. And so we are there because they have this annual fundraiser event. It's called Unmask. And they get a cohort of about 8 to 10 men that are writing about a key moment in their own life about masculinity, and that has actually harmed them. And they create a story and they speak about it publicly in order to take control of it again. And it's this amazing event where they come on stage and they read for about 10 minutes, and you've got people weeping in the audience and tearing up. And also, it's a Saturday night, and there's 200 people that have come to watch these men talk. And to think that kind of event exists today is so heartwarming and gives you energy, because you're like, this did not happen 20 years ago. This is not a previous, this is a first generational change that is happening. And actually every year too, they get a few people that they want to sign up for the next year too, because they're like, they see how powerful it has been for these men, and they want to be able to say, I did that too, and I want to reclaim that part of my masculinity. So it's an incredibly powerful thing. And I'm so fortunate. That's why we get to go all over the country and talk to different people, West Coast, East Coast, right dead in the center. Yeah, so we just came from Chicago and St. Louis last week, and I'm so excited to see where we go next.
Are you traveling with like a small crew, or are they hiring local contractors in various cities, or a mixture?
I'm really lucky. Like, we're trying to keep the same crew together, as for continuity, for just make sure the styles are the same across all the episodes.
You've mentioned a couple of topics, you've got that you're going to be exploring in some upcoming episodes, and it's like, looks like you're sort of chatting with some folks who are experts. You're chatting with some folks who are not maybe experts, but obviously there's common theme around dads and dadhood. But how are you going about like selecting the topics and then finding the people that you're interviewing? What's that process been like?
Basically, I flip a coin and I'm just like, that's it.
and screen time.
We had screen time. Pick straws. It's honestly been like making a series like this, how much time it takes. It's got to be something you feel really connected with and personally involved in too. And so we've looked at issues, also things that can also be evergreen. We don't want things to be stale in a year. We want to make sure that people can watch this in a few years and it be still completely relevant to their lives. I mean, obviously anything dealing with technology, we do have a shelf life, but I think some of the advice we're really giving is going to be universal. I don't think anything Vivek Murthy is going to say is going to be outdated in 20 years. Right. Like, it's going to be really, really useful. So it's about finding also good experts who aren't going to give talking points. It's kind of researching things that they've said, if they have given talks, or there's anything we can do to watch them visually as well and see how they are on camera, because this ultimately this is a visual medium first, and we need story, but let's find topics that we care about deeply, that we feel we can relate to, we can also give some practical advice that are evergreen, and then find people who they're dying to share their information. They love doing it too. And that's what we're trying to do.
I'm just wondering if you're noticing it through this process, through all these interviews, all these discussions, are any new themes that you maybe didn't previously think about covering, sort of popping up as like a natural part of the process?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just being a dad every day, there's like, oh, I got to do an episode on that one day. Like, that's going to be an issue. Like next year, if we get season 2, I really feel strongly we will. But like, there's things, travel sports is something I want to cover, because of how wonderful and awful that can be, and how much of a privilege and how, again, awful it can be. It's like, oh, good. You want me to travel how far in rush hour traffic, and I need to leave work early to do this? Great. I'm so glad you scheduled the game then. We want to talk about, I think also even just on the world scale, like why is Denmark and, Sweden and Norway always considered one of the best countries in the world to raise kids? Yeah. Okay. And can we bring any of that home? Also, let's talk about, even some Asian countries that are struggling with the same thing with their birth rate. Let's look at like South Korea and Japan. South Korea is not bribing, but they're paying people to have kids.
Yeah. Wow.
And they're still struggling with this. And so how does that translate to the things that we need to talk about, and what do we value here as a society, and what does it say when we don't support our parents like this? And then let's just talk about the fact that, like, I think friendship and loneliness has come about sort of in my own life in different ways. And that was a major shift too. I'm like, right, I'm fortunate to have some good friends, but I have felt that loneliness. And so many men now don't think they have a close friend they can confide in. And that's a terrible feeling. And there's a change in the structures and the community aspect of our society right now. And what do we do to find that?
Well, it's comforting to know that you're out there discovering these things and these cohorts and these, examples of men out there doing really positive things in the name of being good dads, and so thank you for doing it, and for creating the show and sort of bringing it to an audience.
Guys, thank you. Right back at you. All right. Every time you highlight a good dad, you are doing a great service to all of us. Really, it's wonderful to be here and to talk with you guys, some like-minded men who we want to be better for our kids too. We want to find more joy in our lives and help our kids thrive.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really looking forward to staying in touch with you and following along with your success, and hopefully having you back on Modern Dadhood at some point. But Joe, thank you so much for your time. Parents listening, definitely go to grownup.dad, which is an awesome URL.
Great URL.
It's a fantastic one.
Yeah.
You can learn everything about the show there. You can find it likely on your local PBS channel. But if you can't, just go to grownup.dad and you'll find all the links there. We'll also include links to the website and to Joe's social media in our episode notes.
Thanks, guys.
Love it.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks so much, Joe.
Listen, in the last episode, we were recording one of our world famous recurring segments, and you said that you had 2, right?
I did.
You gave us an instant regret, but you also said in your back pocket that you had a...
Did I just say that out loud?
Thank you for that. Do you in fact still have that? Is it at the ready? Could you share it?
Please hold.
For the listeners, Mark's frantically going through his phone to find the thing that he said.
I have a lot of notes in here that are specifically for this show. And some of these notes are deep, man. They go quite far. I remember thinking about this one. This one's pretty funny. As per usual, I will say did I just say that out loud? And for those of you who maybe haven't heard a did I just say that out loud or before or for quite a while, these are the things that we find ourselves saying that in the moment when we are saying them, there's this little thing in our brain that's just like, seriously? These are the words that you have to say right now, like out loud, like, and when you realize the absurdity of them, especially when taken out of context, they're sometimes quite funny.
And sometimes you realize it kind of as you're saying it, and sometimes it has already come out, and then you reflect and you're like, holy shit, like, in what world does somebody say this phrase?
All right, so look.
Yes.
Here's what I said, okay? If you can finish breakfast quickly and go brush your teeth, then you can go look at Kitty's puke.
Kitty's puke?
Uh-huh.
Why? Why is that the reward?
So that's a great question that you're asking. And because that was the reward. And this was happening, with the morning routine and the hustle that sometimes exists, that you have to exist within in the morning, especially on like a school day, right?
Well, yeah, it can be mayhem, but it can also, at least for us, it can be like pulling teeth to just get from one step to the next as you work towards getting them out the door.
So you're smelling what I'm cooking.
I'm smelling the cat's puke.
You're smelling what the cat's puking. Yeah, it was just one of those mornings where it was both my wife and I we're each a little bit like the Tasmanian devil, just a flurry of like dust with these arms and legs coming in and out and doing, whatever it is, right? It's like preparing the breakfast.
Yeah, all of it.
Yes. Putting the backpacks together, getting the snacks, trying to get ourselves ready. It was one of these days where I was leaving to go to the office, so I needed to get in the car as well. Whatever, all of these things. And it's just a constant struggle to get the boys to do the few things that they need to be responsible for, which is to finish their breakfast, get their clothes on, get some shoes on their feet, brush the teeth. That's pretty much it. It's not a lot, but it is like pulling teeth on most mornings to get them all of those things done in a timely manner. And it's precarious because anything could upset the apple cart and just send everyone into a tizzy. And on this particular morning, the cat puked upstairs, which is a sound that just goes through, like it's not a normal sound. Right. You know what it is when it's happening, but it takes a second.
Is it breathy or is it like...
Well, it's sort of there's that repeated like, well, I'll just try to do it. Okay. There's
Please.
sort of
I was hoping that you would.
There's you won't be able to see my back arch while I'm doing it, but there's sort of the like it's getting
yeah,
and that repeats.
So unlike the human where it's sort of a long, potentially loud heave, the cat is a start, and it's the staccato thing, a repeated sound that builds and builds, right?
And it's hilarious. It's disgusting. It's all the things. And I remember I was upstairs and I was rushing to go from our bedroom to the office upstairs to like get my things. I had things in my hands, and that was happening just under my feet as I was going through. And I remarked out loud, and it was the noise of the puking plus me remarking out loud that I could hear the chairs downstairs to like, both chairs pushing out.
Instantly they want to go run and see it.
They immediately want to go run and check it out. And so that's what I yelled across the house. It's like, if you can just finish this one thing, guys, you can then come and inspect the cat's puke and it'll be great. But like, you got to do your priorities first.
Oh, man.
Yeah, man. It was a good time.
That's the best. That was an awesome one. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks for listening.
I think that brings us to the end of this awesome episode. Moms and dads, like Mark said at the top, everything's at moderndadhood.com. All of our past episodes, links to our socials, our contact form, modern Dadhood t-shirts and dad hoodies that you can buy. Each order ships with a free sticker.
Great sticker.
Great
It's a great
stickers.
sticker.
Put it on your laptop or your car, whatever. Please tell a friend about the show. Leave us a review, all that good stuff. And thank you, as always, to Casper Baby Pants and to Spencer Albee for the music in the podcast. Thank you to our new friend, Joe Gidjunis. Links to all of his stuff is in the episode notes.
Go check out Grown Up Dad.
Oh, yeah.
Support that show, support his effort so that he can keep making episodes of that show and keep sort of like realizing what his vision for Grown Up Dad, really is, because he's putting in a ton of time, a ton of effort, and it's not an easy thing.
And it's important stuff that he's doing.
Yes.
And Mark Andrew Checkett.
One last thank you. Thank you for listening.
Podcast. Just a modern.